Welcome to the Ukraine Crisis Media Center, and today we offer to your attention expert discussion Russian disinformation in Moldova's parliamentary elections, lessons for Ukraine. On September 28th, as you know, Moldova held parliamentary elections, and during the electoral campaign, Russia extended an attractive information and spread in Moldova during the electoral campaign. Social media as Russia's tool of influence on voter behavior, and I think we will focus mainly on Telegram and TikTok within a campaign in Moldova. And also, I think that we may predict in some way what the strategy of Moscow will be in regard to the further developments in Moldova, and indicate political analyst and general producer at TVR Moldova, Ihor Solovei, head of the Center for Strategic Communication and Information Security, Yevhen Mahda, director of NGO Institute of World Policy, and Mykyta Kuzmenko, analyst of the Hybrid Warfare Analytical Group at the Ukraine Crisis Media Center. And me, Volodymyr Slovyan, will moderate our discussion. I hold the position of the head of Hybrid Warfare Analytical Group at Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Here is the main narratives which we indicated. At first, I'd like to mention some of them. The main narrative from our point of view is the threat of war as a result of the continuation of current government policy, and especially within pro-European course. Then the next narrative is the syndrome of stolen elections. And also pro-Russian actors spread many narratives in regard the so-called Georgian model of the relations with European Union. The next narrative is spread of conspiracy theories that discredit the current government of Moldova, and the final narrative on which we focus is the division of society into the patriots and the supporters of the West. So now I'd like to turn into Ukrainian language, and those who follow us online, our participants from the Zoom may shift the language and continue to follow us and follow our presentation.
So, just focusing on such widespread Russian disinformation practices and technologies, I would love to stop specifically at such tactics, at such political technology as spreading the manipulative polls, yes, popular polls as they call it. So the tactics of so-called social polls that were carried out on websites, and the audience was focused around this already, the pro-Russian audience rotating and around those websites, attracted to those websites, and they held these polls of the websites, and yeah, quite an obvious result we got. So the results of these so-called polls later are published via the network of Russian Telegram channels and TikTok. These are widely spread, and that's how they create an illusion of objective poll. But it's obvious that the methodology of these polls is deteriorated. It's absolutely manipulated and inaccurate. So this is an example of a poll by iData actively used during the parliamentary election campaign, and I just want to focus on that, please. I draw attention to it, that the results of the poll presented by this company, these are pro-opposition, for sure. So the opposition bloc, that was called bloc of patriots. So in the polls made by iData company, they got the majority of votes, which which gave the channels spreading pro-opposition propaganda, which gave these channels chance to manipulate the behavior and actually shape the deteriorated picture for voters. Okay, so what should we note here? Like the trend, the TikTok trend, because for political purpose, use of this social media for political purpose, we can see that the growth of the popularity of this social media has been growing within the recent years. The political content in Moldovan political campaign, well, it was the dominating one, and we've observed the active engagement of governmental subjects. And I should note that the state officials, Moldovan state officials, they were very active with their campaigns on TikTok. Respectfully, opposition representatives, they try to catch up. But we should note here that state authorities communicated properly via TikTok to voters and effectively, and comparing to elections that were canceled in November 2024 in Romania. So we didn't have that domination of candidates who would be able to spread their narratives based on TikTok. So we don't see that trend. We don't observe it in Moldova, specifically, at least within this political campaign. So we basically didn't observe any exponential growth of rating of some political party just because the active use of TikTok and engagement of young voters with some radical mottos, populist mottos. So another important narrative when we talk about the recent political campaigns, so intimidation with war, war threats, these narratives were thrown everywhere, so they're tying war as a concept basically to European integration. It reflects the trends of Russian propaganda as well, because Kremlin is coming from the active criticism of the US, is basing everything actually on active criticism of Trump, and NATO is shown as antagonist together with the EU, which actually shapes again the pro-Russian narratives in Moldova, propaganda narratives. So according to the polls, the majority of Moldovan citizens, they don't consider integration or NATO accession even. So it creates an environment for many manipulations, various manipulations, and so this narrative of European integration tied to Moldova's NATO accession potential risks, so they're trying somehow to put that in one basket, bringing these so-called risks and threats to the fore. So I should note also the active narrative that was circulating in the previous electoral campaign, that West is trying to push Moldova to active phase of countering Russia or opposing Russia, and they use this narrative to try and actively tie the Transnistrian topic, and put it in the context. There were so many signals that certain provocations were like being prepared in Transnistria that had to mobilize the voters, which, let's say, are afraid that Moldova can potentially be dragged into conflict with Russia. And here we bring some examples of pro-Russian political actors and subjects. Ihor Dodon, in his official TikTok channel, he was publishing and posting a video where in very direct speech, he is accusing authorities that they want to drag Moldova into conflict or war with Russia, that they say that in order to save the situation in the front line, EU is pushing Moldova into the war because they want somehow to keep their face. This was like one of the key narratives that he used. The patriotic bloc narratives. That in case, they said that in case that PAS party wins, Moldova will definitely be dragged directly into the war with Russia because one will support Ukraine. So The central image that we can see on the slide, it shows this black PR, an example of the so-called black PR, when the opposition parties or those who disagree with the current government, they were posting these TikToks where there's a banner where they directly tie the voting for current government to the war context. So they say that PAS party will forcibly drag the country in direct opposition and direct conflict. Well, what was also actively spread, various conspiracy theories were there circulating. Some Telegram channels, Russian Telegram channels, were publishing this open map that they were saying that this was basically the plan of the NATO countries and Ukraine's aggression against the Transnistria. So top-level speakers were engaged to explain that, and we can see that even such Russian speaker, top-level speaker Sergei Lavrov, who is the head of Russian MFA, and also the intelligence top officials were engaged in spreading those narratives that somehow had to impact the election results. So I'm passing the floor to my colleague Mykyta Kuzmenko, and Mykyta Kuzmenko will give you some more details about one case that we presented in our paper. Okay, thank you, Volodymyr, so much. Truly, when we were preparing this paper, this analysis, we found a couple of interesting conspiracy theories that were spread by Russia via their own channels, propaganda and disinformation channels, and one of these is this case that is called the Anti-Trump Plan. So who was the author of it? Who has become the author of it? The pro-Kremlin former Ukrainian TV host Diana Panchenko. Before the full-scale invasion, she was one of the leading faces of Medvedchuk's TV channels of the pool. And after 2022, she came to Russia on September 11, 2025. In her Telegram channel, she published an announcement to Donald Trump, where she was telling in that video announcement that France and Great Britain, together with Moldova and Ukraine, are preparing a plan of escalation in the Transnistrian region. That allegedly, in the beginning of June, Moldova and France signed a sort of document between the armed forces HQs of these countries, and there was a confidential part where they wanted to prepare provocations against Tiraspol. And after successful re-election, now Maia Sandu will be ready to sanction the military operation against Tiraspol, where they will also engage Ukrainian armed forces. So that was what she's telling. So she was the single popularizer of the theory, Diana Panchenko herself. For a couple of times, she was coming to various informational platforms where she was trying to push that narrative. But what's interesting, even the pro-Kremlin TG channels were not so active to disseminate this theory, but just indirectly mentioning it somewhere implicitly. Okay. When they realized that this attempt to spread this theory failed, Russian Federation used another thing. On September 22nd, some of the TG channels presented news saying that their source was the Russian intelligence, saying that NATO was preparing an operation to occupy Transnistrian territories. And this scenario was already tested during the NATO training in Romania. So with this 100% falsified elections, then we'll have citizens coming to the streets, and Sandu will have only one way to act, so asking help from the neighbors, NATO countries, I mean. So that was the targeted campaign, the deliberate one. On 23rd September, next day, the messages with these links to intelligence has become the most popular in pro-Kremlin TG channels. And let's say, to prepare the plan B, so the External Intelligence Service said that the other possible date of that operation on Transnistrian occupation, apart from the next day of the election, this can be November 30th. when we'll have elections in the Transnistria. So this informational operation, again, wasn't successful, we can say, because there was no significant impact with these conspiracy theories. They just failed eventually. Thank you so much, Mykyta. And now I would love to step into the discussion, actually, and start talking to our guests. Okay.
Give the floors to Constantin Uzdrisch, a political analyst and general producer at TVR Moldova. So, dear Constantin, do you hear us?
Yeah. Do you hear me?
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. So please, what are your reflections regarding the key narratives which we briefly described before, and maybe you may indicate the main methods which were implemented by pro-Russian actors in regard of disinformation within the campaign of 2025.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Slava Ukraini. From my point of view, the other actors, very active actors who want to influence the election in the Republic of Moldova, it was a Gagauzian region. Also in this region, and all narratives was against Chisinau and using the force against the Gagauzian some nation of Gagauzian or people from Gagauzian. Also, the other narratives was like happens in Ukraine before the total invasion in 2020. It was using the Moldovan Orthodox Church that it's under the Kremlin Patriarchy, it's Moscow Patriarchy. We have a lot of, today my colleagues published on documents from the National Police. In that elections was documented more than 20 20 popes who are working in this patriarchy, who are now are under processing that was implicated in the election campaign. Of course, the war was a central theme of this campaign. In this point of view, you describe the TikTok activity. Unfortunately, we have some kind of TikTok political party now in the election. We're waiting for validating or not validating the mandates. It's mean democracy at home. It's this party, small party, but this party comes to parliament and have more than 5% of votes. This Kostyuk, who is a little bit of political activist, a little bit of businessman with Russia, it's a little bit of people who is with Trump, because in his election he also called to platform, to MAGA, to MEGA, to all platforms from Mr. Trump. And he is a little bit of nationalist. It's unified. He wants to unify it with Romania. It's a mix of narratives in his party, and this mix of narrative unfortunately has very big success in especially in TikTok and Facebook. So we're waiting next week the Constitutional Court will discuss about the validation of the election, and this mix of narratives, it was used in the election campaign. Of course, we did not have a political campaign about the situation in Moldova, about the economical projects, about the social projects. Of course, this campaign, from my point of view, was the most geopolitical campaign and the most influenced by Russia with money, with manipulation, with trying to influence and trying to improve the messages with all techniques that they have. They did not have a TV, but they concentrate a lot of resources, and special in social media and in internet. They buy a lot of money for making a website. I can explain you my experience of change the website of TVR Moldova. It was a very big procedure during the money, but they changed the websites in 24 hours. 24 hours. They need to change one site. For example, when start the war in Ukraine, the authorities closed the website of Sputnik. In 24 hours, they made the other website, Sputnik.midi.work. Authorities closed one site, they remake the other one. So in this election campaign, it was the same situation.
Thank you so much for your points, and now I'd like to give the floors to Mihai Isac, Foreign Policy and Security Analyst, Senior Editor, Karadeniz Press Agency. Mr. Isac, do you hear us?
Yes, I hear you. I hope you hear me also.
Yeah, we hear you as well. So maybe you could please give us your points regarding the Russian informational strategy in regard of parliamentary elections in Moldova, and mainly may we predict how it will act after elections when it did not receive result and Moldova stayed on its European path.
Thank you very much for your question, and congratulations to your team for organizing this kind of event. Lessons from Ukraine are important for Moldova, and lessons from Moldova are important for Ukraine and other state partners. As you are well aware, in 2025, the Republic of Moldova faced one of the most complex and industrialized campaigns of foreign interference in its modern history. What we have seen is no longer a collection of isolated disinformation episodes, but a fully coordinated ecosystem of manipulation, financed, designed, and maintained by structures linked to the Russian secret services. We have seen a true war launched against our diaspora. This should be of concern also for Ukraine, because of the long war, over 11 years of war. We have seen continuing increase in the number of members of the Ukrainian diaspora abroad. So I think Ukrainian state should take some measures to better protect the information space of the Ukrainian diaspora. Also, the Moldovan government tried to do this. Is not as successfully we would like, but what can we do with so little resources? Sorry. The goal was not merely only to alter the outcome of the September 28 parliamentary elections, but to erode public trust in democracy itself, to delegitimize institutions like the Central Election Commission, the judiciary, the police, and of course independent media. Russia's strategy moved beyond propaganda into a systemic multi-platform operation. It is used fake news portals, AI-generated deepfakes, phishing attacks, pseudo-NGOs, forged surveys, and paid online ads to distort Moldova's information space. These efforts intensified between May and September 2025, precisely during the election period. For example, we have the Pravda network with at least 129 websites in over 50 languages, which reached about 500,000 users per day. We also have the so-called Blocknot network with over 100 sites across Moldova, Ukraine, and Russia, spreads synchronized anti-European, anti-Ukrainian, and anti-democratic narratives. In the copycat infrastructure linked to Russia's GRU military intelligence service, operated over 250 fake news sites mimicking local outlets from Republic of Moldova, from Romania, and from our diaspora. Also on TikTok, actors from civil society found more than 2,000 fake accounts with nearly 2 million followers, generating over 42 million interactions in just a few weeks. This is industrial scale manipulation. The volume, coordination, and cross-platform synchronization are unprecedented. One of special cases that I'd like to talk about is the role of the Russian Orthodox Church in Moldova. My colleague Constantin Uzdrisch talked already about it. But the scale of the information war perpetrated using Orthodoxy is mind-blowing. Over 900 Telegram channels were used to spread propaganda inside of Moldova and outside in Moldovan diaspora. Unfortunately, the churches who are under Russian Patriarchate in Italy, for example, and they use Romanian language as service language, has been used to propagate a lot of propaganda against European Union, against Ukraine, against Romania, and against the ideal of European integration of Moldova. So when we talk about this type of industrial scale manipulation, we should understand that these sites were not independent journalism. They were instruments of state-sponsored information laundering designed to make propaganda look like neutral international reporting. Domestically, we had a lot of operations like Antipas, Hai TV, or MD24, who targeted the Moldovan government directly. They used fake civic context, clone websites, and false NGO identities to reward anti-European messages, spread hatred, and harvest citizens' personal data through fake polls and phishing links. At the same time, a hybrid campaign used AI-generated deepfakes and forged documents, including a fake presidential decree claiming Moldova was preparing for war, which was distributed online with the logo of a Moldovan TV channel to appear authentic. As your colleagues show on site where you are holding the conference, we have seen a lot of deep fake usage, and this could be done only by people with skills in such kind of warfare. And as we are all aware, Russian Secret Service are known for the usage of technology to implement their strategy of disruption. Parallel to this, we had seen coordinated networks of bots and trolls who worked around the clock to amplify the same narratives. Moldova is being dragged into war, the EU is destroying traditional values. This particular destruction of traditional values was used especially in areas with ethnic minorities, of course, like Gagauz region and the region in the north of the country, which has an important number of ethnic Ukrainians. All of these messages served only one purpose: to make citizens distrust democracy and the European path. Perhaps most worrying are the phishing and cyber infiltration tactics. Between July and August 2025, Moldovan officials received fake WhatsApp and Zimbra messages, which were cloned login pages used to steal credentials and hijack communication accounts. One fake domain even impersonated the Council of Europe or the government of Romania to make it appear as it is European or from a country which is closely allied to Republic of Moldova. So Moldova is no longer just a test case of Russian disinformation. It is a part of a regional laboratory for hybrid influence operations targeting Europe's democratic periphery. So we must understand that this only response should be coordinated, transparent, and sustained by Republic of Moldova and also by state partners. It requires continuous investment in media literacy, civic education, and institutional transparency. And also, we must understand that the law of the Republic of Moldova should be applied, because when we talk about the case that Constantin Uzdrisch also talked, with the involvement of the priest of the Russian Orthodox Church in Moldova, until we will see people from this clergy put under arrest or being charged with their crimes, the feeling of impunity will also help other Russian associated factors from the Republic of Moldova. And only 1:30 seconds, this information war is not over. In a couple of weeks, we will have elections in the Găgăuz region for the local parliament, Hartoprușu, and as you are well aware, that region is practically under politically Russian occupation. That will be another test for the government of the Republic of Moldova and for all our society as a whole. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for this detailed analysis, and we will also follow developments in regard of elections in Gagauzia, and because this is a very vulnerable issue for Ukraine, the stability of Republic of Moldova, and now I think it will be logically to follow up with Yuliia Dukach, because OpenMinds, the organization she represents, prepared the, I think, very informative investigation and research, which is titled "How Russia Uses AI-Driven Bots on Telegram to Meddle in Moldova's Elections." So now I will like to turn into Ukrainian and ask Yuliia to present her main topics, main points in regard of this investigation, this research. Please.
I will continue in Ukrainian language. Можно кликер?
Okay, I'd like to have the clicker. Okay. So in OpenMinds, we also observed how Russian informational operations, how these were trying to meddle with Moldova's elections. And we started studying Telegram. You know, in Moldova, Telegram is not the key source of information compared to Ukraine. But Telegram for us, well, it gives us an understanding, at least. Like, we took it as a sandbox, a perfect Petri cup, where Russian info operations can be spread without limitations, without moderation, for these narratives to be used that they want to, and with no resistance to be met at that time. So, when we analyzed the informational environment in the Moldovan Telegram, when we took all the channels, accumulated all the channels which gravitate towards these topics, politics-related topics, at least 32% of all Moldovan TG channels reposted pro-Kremlin sources more than 10 times. Yeah. Meaning that, in fact, they were spreading Russian narratives directly, explicitly, and some share was doing that from 1 to 10 times, not that often, but still, even without open reposts, they were still transferring Russian messages directly to audiences. But when we paid attention to the following, when we saw that the majority of these pro-Russian TG channels have open comments section, we realized that this was another type of info operation, another type of impact that the previous speaker mentioned. So use of bots, yes, use of bots to imitate the social opinion, to imitate the social consensus. In fact, the key task of that of this operation to legitimize Russian narratives, pro-Russian narratives, anti-European, and make these visible. Like this is something that is shared by the audience locally. So when we actually analyzed more than 80 TG channels with open comments, so when we gathered all the comments in these accounts, we've seen that there wasn't like human activity mostly in that. And within the period of the research that we've carried out in 2 iterations, before elections and the day after elections, we've analyzed and 584 bots we've identified and analyzed, which were active in 76 channels. And from the beginning of July, within this period, they published more than 86 8K comments. Imagine every 8th comment left in TG channels in Moldova was made by a bot. But almost all of them were centralized. We tried to identify various bot farms, and we've seen that we speak about one large bot farm with small info companies that were engaged. When we analyzed the peaks, well, they were the most active on election day, of course, and when then they generated like more than almost 4,000 comments where they were like telling to vote, calling to vote, but not for the pro-European party. And they asked to support the pro-Russian one. And they were spreading the artificially generated videos discrediting Maya Sandu, PAS party. And they were spreading again those narratives that we already mentioned. What's also important that, yes, these bots were not just only about narratives. These tried to activate, mobilize the audience as much as they could. So to push actual people, living humans, to protest. I'm going to protest today. Are you going? They were imitating some human activity. And they tried to mobilize at least almost 2,000 comments were there with calls to protest, to go to the streets, on weekend. And what's important to understand that if a couple of years ago, how we identified the bots. So we took the same message, which was spread by various users in different channels. As of now, in this activity of Moldovan bots, we can see what the generative AI can give us. 95% of all comments were unique, okay? Now, doubles are not helping us, yes, to identify bots. Every single comment. And these were so alike with the content. Very, very alike. Accusations of being corrupted, accusations against the government, or Ukrainian war that we may bring and EU may bring to Moldova with the help of European parties. So this whole thing was formulated with different words thanks to AI. And one of the most important finds that we have was the opportunity to have this attribution of bots, as we call it, because unfortunately bot farms, this is something that is hard to say who owns that. We know the bots. We can see thousands of accounts who someone made, spreading narratives. We can make hypotheses who is paying, who's requesting that, but saying who specifically owns that, we cannot, because limited data accumulation in social platforms, not enough information. But in this case, we can say that at least 75% of bots, of all these bots we've identified in Moldova, these were Russian bots. And why? How do we know that? Well, we asked data providers who have more information on TG. We asked them to give information which other comments these users were leaving, those who identified as bots on platform. And we've seen that 75% of all accounts were active in Russian and Ukrainian TG channels, like two mayors, Hlavkom, since the beginning of 2025, these were spreading pro-Kremlin narratives and messages. And in fact, were active as a part of Russian info operation in Ukrainian war. So we have no doubt that at least 75% of all identified bots, the most active ones of the identified, these were active in Russia also, so they are a part of a large Russian bot farm, or a bot farm that helps Russia to spread propaganda. What's also interesting, in summer, together with our colleagues, we published a report with analysis of bots' activity in occupied territories in Ukraine. Back then, we found 3,500 accounts, leaving 300,000 comments in Telegram channels of occupied territories in more than a year. So 8 of those accounts that were spreading pro-Kremlin narrative in occupation, these were active before Moldovan elections as well. In fact, they took the technology that was already tested in Ukraine and they exported it to Moldova, let's say. So we expect that this technology will be used in future campaigns trying to impact various countries. By the way, we have every single reason to say that this is not just Telegram, people. It's also other platforms and bots. Apart from the statements, they were spreading the links to video generated by AI, discrediting Maya Sandu, and these were fully automatized. And it's important to note here that bots are not humans now, okay? And there are so few humans in this process. Humans just set the narratives that bots disperse. And a small example of automatization level. Why do we know that these are bots with generative AI? Because first of all, we can see the variety of texts that they use. Secondly, we can see that sometimes they cannot adapt their messages to posts like we have it here, so they fail. When the publication was about the rain started in one Moldovan city, and under this publication, we have bots telling that, again, Sandu is spoiling everything, even the weather. Because of her, we have rain, and Sandu even spoils the weather. We cannot live in this country because of her. And like the sky over Moldova is becoming darker. Yes, so these are like absurd manifestations of generative comments, which show this Pandora's box, this technology beyond these accounts, but actually it gives us a chance to conclude. As of now, Russia is creating a technology which allows to establish thousands of accounts of bots, and thanks to AI, in fact, it's filling our online environment with its narratives. Well, this is an exception with the rain, but this looks stupid, but in vast majority, these will look like human comments. And now, looking at the comments saying if it's bot or not without additional data on the publications of user, it's impossible to distinguish, even for those who study bots, okay? Even if I open any post, in Telegram Moldova, I will not be able to say if this is definitely left by bot or not, because it will be super authentic and it will be very logically intertwined in the discussion thanks to improved generative AI capacity. This is a good lesson for us for future. This is the capacity, and deleting bots from platforms doesn't work. They instantly create new ones. The only way to interact is to tell people about this technology, for people just to stop reading those comments, which is very naive as well. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, I have a small clarifying question. When it comes to the technologies that Russia is using, okay, we speak about AI. Did you study maybe in other projects? Did you study which software, which programs, techniques? Is it ChatGPT that is used, or do they use Western companies' software, or Russia has its own product? We know this Alisa AI, and Russia is funding it constantly. They're trying to develop this industry, in their own country. So should we expect some attempts of Russia to create their own AI product, or this is like a general open industry? So thank you so much. This is a very good question. Unfortunately, we have only comments like the final product. With these, it's hard to say which generative AI is backing this. But thanks to studies from Sfera partners, so there was a study showing that Russia is highly likely using a large language model from Meta, which is the open source. So they were able to download that, retrain it with their data. And for these info campaigns, for Russia, the most important thing is to use the language model where there are no moral ethical limitations. Because truly, I can tell you a lot about the tactics of these bots, but the GPT models or codes with moral limitations where you cannot use hate speech in that model, these would not generate the content spread by the bots, because quite often, it's about the hate speech that we hear quite often. And this was the MAT model, open source version. We know that it was used, and highly likely that was they have a lot of data, They have a lot of comments in the Telegram already to train it and make it more effective. I think that this is what they use, I guess, than just creating their own from the scratch, their language model. In Moldova, language bots were using Romanian language as well. It tells us that this is like some international multi-language model. But as of now, it doesn't take a lot of resources to upskill your model. You can do that. And Russia has been using comments for quite a long time to put its impact, impose its impact. They even use their own environment to train these models. Therefore, So I think as of now, we cannot impact like any moral limitations or establish these for AI models. There are so many open, accessible, Chinese you can use. They can do the same and at the same level of quality. So the human, basically, you cannot say if it's human or bot. Thank you so much.
To move forward to our Moldovan partners and receive some comments in regard of our discussion. I think it will be great to ask Tatiana Cojocari, researcher, foreign policy expert from Institute of Political Sciences and International Relations, Romanian Academy. Do you hear us?
Good evening. Yes, I hear you.
Hi, Tatiana. Thanks very much for joining us. So my question is about your perception of vulnerabilities of Moldova's informational space, especially in regard to the topic which we discussed before. I mean, Russian usage of artificial intelligence as a toolkit of propaganda.
Thank you so much, Volodymyr, for the invitation. Thanks for the interesting discussion. I'm not sure that Moldova can teach lessons to Ukraine, but together we can work and identify our vulnerabilities to become stronger. I'll try to give you a little broader perspective than just AI and ChatGPT, because it's not my field. What I would like really to emphasize is that what we learn from these elections, parliamentary election in the Republic of Moldova, is that all strategies for combating disinformation, misinformation, and hybrid warfare, they are not longer effective. And you know that in Ukraine, and these elections in Moldova came to make it again a point. So fact-checking, media literacy, they are nice, but they are not very effective if you don't have a strong legislation and legal framework which allows you to fight actually and to take measures to prevent and to punish the one who are breaking the law, who are like not respecting the laws Mihai also mentioned. And I really think that this is the difference between current elections, parliamentary elections in the Republic of Moldova, and the previous one, the presidential elections. So what we saw now in this election, our public institutions, authorities, they were more involved. They took measures. They prevent not just part of disinformation online, but they took more measures in stopping these schemes, illegal corruption of the voters, which are operated from Moscow by Lanshor and other agents. Why I'm saying that? Because I don't believe that speaking about the information space, I don't believe that much progress or much change we can notice now, comparing to 1 year ago, we still have 70% of the population who are using mostly social media. And here I'm speaking about Telegram, I'm speaking about Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. So even though people are aware in the Republic of Moldova that on social media we have a lot of fake news, most of the fake news, they still go and read news and inform themselves and comment and interact with these bots, right, and fake profiles in social media. And now I'll connect this with the vulnerabilities of the Republic of Moldova. As very nicely pointed, one of the tactics or one of the aim of Russian disinformation is to delegitimize, make it less credible when it comes to public institutions and social institutions. And one of the issues that we have now in Republic of Moldova is a very low trust in media, and especially in traditional media. And here I'm speaking about TV, newspapers, and so on and so forth. So if back in time, in 2005, we had a trust in media around 60%, currently in 2025, we have a 30% trust. On 1/3 of the population trust in media. And this is a huge issue if you want to fight, to become more resilient when it comes to information. If you do not trust your media, public media, and independent media, in national media I'm referring to, then how you can combat and fight with all the spread of the information, misinformation, because why people are using this social media, they are looking for more like, let's say, more trustworthy sources of information. And we do have a lot of problems also with influencers in the Republic of Moldova who are paid by Russia and promoting the propaganda of Russia. So I think this is a huge problem, speaking about our information environment. Another issue, one of the vulnerabilities of Republic of Moldova, people do not trust in mass media, but they also think that our mass media is very politicized, if I can say that. It's not an objective, it's let's say partisanship. Like we do media which is tagged as being pro-European, and we have media which is tagged as being pro-Russia or promoting Russian narratives. And this is a huge problem, because if you're asking people, do you think that our mass media is independent? Around 60% of the population, more than a half, they are saying that mass media in Republic of Moldova is not independent and it is politicized, it is influenced by a political agenda. And I think our authorities have to, I think they need media literacy, our politicians, in order to accept critics from journalists and let journalists to do their job. And it's very much worrying, this trend, because Russian speakers from the Republic of Moldova, we have around 21% of Russian speakers from the entire population. They are even more skeptical when it comes to national mass media, so they have even lower trust in mass media. So we can see how this is correlated with the political behavior as well. I can go on this topic, but I also would like to mention another two important topics which are related with our media resilience, information resilience, let's say. Gagauzia, it was mentioned, and this is another huge problem, because Gagauzia is a bubble, informational bubble, and it's very difficult to break this bubble and inform people, and also to make people from Gagauzia to trust independent media sources. And then we have Transnistria, which is a very weak point of the Republic of Moldova. And they are also in an informational space, let's say, controlled by Russia. And even local media from the Transnistria region, they are promoting false narratives in relation to Chisinau. So speaking about reintegration of the two banks of the Dniester River, it is very problematic how you can reintegrate a space, like a region, which is being told for years that Chisinau is your main enemy. And yeah, you cannot trust Chisinau. So I think we have to reshape a little bit our politics. Yeah, last year we made a progress. Now one of the national media TV station from Chisinau, from Moldova, is broadcasting also in Transnistria, but is not enough to counteract the influence of Russia and also the oligarchs. So these are my main takes. And I do believe that we are still very vulnerable, and I do believe that our authorities don't have the full capacity to operate and to mitigate, let's say, the risk and to prevent all the risk. And also, we don't have the full capacity to deal with the problematic regions like Gagauzia and Transnistria. So, as we all like to say now, of course, everyone is happy about the results, but these results of the election, they are like, we won just a battle, not a war. So I think the war is still ahead of us, and I think Russia will really instrumentalize, weaponize Transnistria in the near future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and I have another question in regard of your assessments, how Moldova tries to be present at the informational space of Transnistria, and also impact on social thought in Gagauzia, but how does it work in regard of youngsters? I mean, those citizens of Moldova in Gagauzia and also their counterparts from Transnistria who are quite active in TikTok, in Telegram, and whether there are any active steps in this regard from Chisinau.
It's a very great question. Thank you so much for raising it. I mentioned about influencers. So influencers, they are really very important in shaping the opinion of young people, because young people, if we want to separate a little bit the media environment. So older generation, they are still very much following TV station, and they trust actually on traditional media. As for the young people, they are mostly online. So that's why it's important to also have kind of a legal framework to regulate the activity of influencers and to monitor the speech of influencers and the content of influencers, which we currently do not have in the Republic of Moldova. I'll give you just one example. I was sitting in Chisinau, like in the night of the election, and some young people were cheering the results of PAS party and mentioning one very influential person, public figure here, Cătălin Lungu 02, saying that like this influencer actually shaped their political behavior. So this influencer is promoting by himself pro-European agenda, but we have a lot of them who are promoting pro-Russia agenda, and it's really important to raise these issues and to think how to deal in future. And it's the same with Gagauzia and Transnistria, because many people from Transnistria, young people, and from Gagauzia, they're also following different personalities on YouTube, on TikTok, on Telegram, and it's all about trust. If they trust these people, it's no matter what you'll tell to these people, they'll believe you. So it's more now, I think, with the internet era, it's more about legitimacy of the person. So if you trust the person, you'll believe everything, no matter what they are saying to you. If you do not trust, then we can try and give you facts and numbers and arguments, but you'll not be willing to believe, because you will put a tag on me. I'm a pro-European. I'm Soros, yeah, and so on and so forth. And it's a trend that is very worrying and polarizing society. And one thing that I also wanted to mention in my previous discussion, another vulnerability, let's say, it's like Ukrainian minorities in the Republic of Moldova. We have around 4% from the entire population. I'm not speaking about Ukrainians who moved due to Russian full-scale invasion in Moldova, but about the Ukrainians who are here in Moldova, Ukrainian minorities. They're also very vulnerable to Russian disinformation and Russian media environment. They are consuming a lot, and their views, they are also very pro-Russians. And I think we together have to work to promote, to provide them more content in Ukrainian language, more cultural social events, more influencers even from Ukraine who are broadcasting here, or who are also very visible in Republic of Moldova, because 4% is not a lot, but it still matters when it comes to winning the hybrid warfare. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and especially for sharing with us your personal experience and these points of view and recommendations. I think now we may also address the question to Mr. Uzdrisch. Do you hear us?
Yes, of course.
Yes. So in this regard, from your point of view, how we may raise trust towards reliable sources of information, especially in Moldova, and maybe these examples will be useful also for Ukraine as well.
First of all, from my point of view, it must to be very clear politic of our authorities. How said Ms. Cojocari, the legislation of Moldova must to be not so permissive for media, and special for foreign media. We must to regulate very well the financing, how we finance the media and influencers and the other, because we have experience also in Romania when the influencers can do one politics from sociological studies. Mr. Georgescu was at 4%, not more than 4%, and he's coming to more than 20%, just using the influencers in TikTok and Facebook at that time in Romania. Because what happened in Moldova? In Moldova, during the independence, we retranslate, first of all TV channels, all Russian TV channels. We're starting to ban some of them during the period of Plahotniuc regime here in Moldova, but it wasn't clear anti-propaganda law, and we stopped all retranslation of Russian TV station just in 24 of February in 2022. But what they does after that, they moved to internet, all of them. The short TV channels, the Russian TV channels, the Russian resources, all of them are moved to internet, and the sponsors, for example, was a very good investigation of our colleagues from Zarul Garde and from the other media, that media resources from Russia, or like Natalia Morat, who was a journalist, paid more than 90,000 euro per month just for sponsoring the posts in the social media. But Russia have a lot of monies for paying and for sponsoring all of content they want. From my point of view, the first one, it's for our authorities, and I did not saw in the last law of and strategy of security clear position in the media, and what we propose for us, in special for social media and for internet medias. First, my first point is a clear position. It's to stop all, and of course financing, because the independent media in Moldova have very big problems. I'm working for Romanian public television, and I'm in media for more than 10 years, and I know that our advertising market is very small, and the concurrence is very big here in Moldova, and you cannot have very strong service if you have not money. And if we will stop the illegal financing of media, of our social media's platforms in the media, I think from my point of view, it will be more transparent, and it can be a very good and strong concurrence here in the media market in Moldova. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and now I'd like to turn to Ukraine, and maybe we shall continue our discussion in regard to Ukrainian experience and lessons we may learn from Moldova's parliamentary and presidential elections of 2024. Зараз
Okay, so I would love to ask you about what can we conclude? What can be the conclusions about the trends in the use of social media by Russia, how it's actively trying to push the narratives of its propaganda in TikTok, which is becoming more popular in our region. So I would love to have Ihor Solovei in the discussion now. Please, Ihor, tell us, in your opinion, how can this campaign look like in future with Russian disinformation when it comes to social media impact? Yes, and shall the future elections, when doesn't matter when we finally have the electoral campaign in Ukraine, doesn't matter when, regardless of, will it be again another Petri cup for Russian disinformation? I mean, the social media. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Quite an interesting question. That's an interesting question, truly, because this is the two-way street, basically. I know that we've been permanently observing what's happening around us, how Russians are trying to impact our neighbors. So Romania, Moldova primarily. And our friends and partners, neighboring friends and partners, are looking at our experience, yes? And they ask us to share. So I was observing the Moldovan electoral process in the middle of the observers group, Ukrainian, Moldovan, Romanian group. So from the inside, we've seen how was everything taking place. And I should note, the first observation I have is that what Russians were focused on, they focused on the following: to mobilize their voters. And they were using all possible resources for that. Propaganda, disinformation, and of course organizational steps they've taken. I was more interested in these hybrid steps that they took. And my Moldovan colleagues already mentioned this. In particular, what I talk about. The network, the churches, the popes of Moldovan Patriarchy, Moscow Patriarchy, Moldovan churches. Within 6 months, they were taken to Russia. They were brainwashed there, you know. And all these groups, pilgrimages as they call that, yes. All these groups were talking to propagandists from Единая Россия party, intelligence services, and each of them got loans, you know, to buy some stuff, some merch. And each got a credit card, each pope. Each priest got a credit card, which later they were using to get money when they arrived home. So this is the bribery. This is the bribery itself. It's not just the bribe given to a voter, but they shaped a pool, you know. So when all these priests returned there, so they opened, they had their own resources already, yes? And Telegram channels even, in their small parishes, you know, with small audiences, but it's not the Telegram channel of the parish that's important, but the speech delivered by the priest in the church, like on Sundays, talking to his people, and if he says to vote for that, people will do that. So that was quite a successful solution for Russia, you know, and in this specific situation. the response of our Moldovan partners was definitely correct. They realized how dangerous that this was. First of all, they were documenting all this. Secondly, they later published that. But the most important thing they did, they neutralized this network as they actually could. But that's a serious step. Like before the elections, there were certain searches, arrests, documents were extracted with other materials. They found a lot of literature, pro-Russian literature and publications to be distributed before the election. So this is a serious group that is discrediting and impacting the election results, even more than TikTok, okay? So another component is that Russians were preparing the so-called security block, that was prepared to defend the election results, as they call it, And in these groups, they had strong men, sporty strong men who were trained, in one of the countries, one of the Balkan countries. So they even had this scenario prepared. So it was really nice to check how in Russia they were screaming, and being angry that Moldovan authorities stole the elections from the pro-Russian subjects, okay? So this tells us that Maya Sandu and her team learned Ukrainian lessons very well. And I know that colleagues from Ukraine shared that. And it's so nice that these conclusions were heard and properly used. Because our experience since 2014 and now Romanian experience and also Moldovan experience, this whole thing shows that you have to be strong enough to defend yourself, even as a democracy, okay? This is the final part of your question also. What shall we do with that? Shall we learn some lessons? We'll have that as well in our elections in future. Absolutely. We had it previously and we will have it now. Moldova's case shows how fast everything's evolving. That when we finally set the electoral campaign, whatever, next year, in 3-5 years, whatever. So when we finally roll this process out, the technologies we've seen here will be obsolete. And we will have another challenges, more innovative, ones, more innovative techniques. New platforms may be there even. New mechanisms, whatever. So just to finish, thank you so much, dear colleagues. Thank you for standing strong. Thank you, standing strong in Moldova. Thank you for protecting the democracy. We understand that this fight, this battle is won, the war is still not won, but the bad news is that this war, it's not just the war of Moldova against Russia. Or maybe this is some good news. It's not just your war, but this is the war of the whole European continent, of the whole civilized world. And while Russia is still having an opportunity and means to have huge money spent, as you called, on bot farms, trolls, on bribery of priests, celebrities, provoking, when they can pay for that, unless they cannot, well, we will still have problems in any country. In Moldova and Ukraine, everywhere they can reach, with Russian trace. So the root problem, the root of evil, Russia must be deprived of any means to run its disinformation hybrid war. Yeah, this is for another roundtable, I guess, yeah? Thank you so much, Ihor. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
In this regards, about the church and about the activity in the social media, a lot of our popes who are under Moscow Patriarchy are very old people, but what we saw last year before the election and before that, how said our colleagues, the pelerinage in Moscow, they start to open the social media pages here in Moldova, in special Facebook and in special Telegram, and to publish all of activities that has happened in this community, in these churches. It starts with maybe church services, I don't know, the celebration of some important days, but I think more than 19% of churches in Moldova starts to develop these social media accounts, especially before, after this pelerinage in Moscow and before the elections, the presidential and the referendum in last year. Thank you very much. It was just a remarks what I saw in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Uzdrisch. And in this regard, I will like to add my personal experience. And here I will turn into Ukrainian.
Okay, so within our monitoring, we also are controlling the activities related to activities of TikTok pages, Russian TikTok pages. In August, by the way, when we had this pilgrimage from Kamenets-Podilsky to Pochaev in Ukraine, with many people walking, you know, and from one church to another, there was it was a coordinated process. So they were like disseminating a video streaming this walk, and there were many representatives also from Transnistria, young people, young priests, by the way, of Moscow Patriarchy, who have their TikToks, you know, and who actually propagate Russian views and pro-Russian values, who of course try to avoid the war. They don't talk about the war directly, but this is still an implicit propaganda of the Russian world, as we call it. And the state has limited tools to counter that, because instantly we start getting narrative about violating the rights of for the freedom of speech and interfering in the church activities, yes, in church affairs. So this is quite a significant tool, serious tool that Russia is using, and I think that we'll see that in future as well, and we will have this threat scaled. Okay, in the context of Ihor's remarks that Russia will have enough of funds, we can see that Russia is pouring a lot of money now, as much as they can, to make sure that disinformation is there. This is one of the pillars of basically Russian foreign policy, you know, and in this context, I would love to say that in our group, we will publish a document where we will check the trends of Russian expenditures and Russian budget processes. We'll check what Russia is ready to spend on, including propaganda. I know that they will definitely continue with this. We can see this with international activity. For so many times, we've been presenting the Russia Today Academy activities and telling what it was. So it itself is a proof that Russia will continue searching for various tools to influence international audiences, and regardless all of the economic difficulties, we can like give a whole list of those, of the indicators we have. The VAT goes up, you know, and also federal reserves are not endless, as we know. But we can see that there are factors telling us that there are systemic problems with budget and the economy of Russia is slowing down. But still, Russia is doing everything to make sure that informational influence is continued. So my colleague Mykyta, if I may give a remark, please, just one, yes. There's some good news that definitely Russia's economy with the sanctions is slowly fading, but with my own experience of talking to Moldovan colleagues, Romanian colleagues, and Russian colleagues who worked in Moldova, they will always find money for propaganda, unfortunately. First of all, because they will. This is their modus operandi. And it's easy to steal there. Nobody controls the financial streams. The amounts that we heard from our colleagues about, it's not even like the top. It's not the roof. As they used it in Moldova and Romania previously, from a certain pool of experts, from a certain number of experts, they were like telling unofficially how much money they managed to steal and expropriate within these campaigns. I heard one so-called expert from Russia. He said, if all the money given for Ukraine, and you can put any country instead of Ukraine, if all the money reached the destination point, you would already be dead. 90% of that financial stream from Moscow, they stay in Moscow. So imagine the expropriation. Imagine how much is just stolen, people who are close to decision-making level, they'd be really interested to make sure that they give as much money as can be for media projects, but it doesn't reach the destination. Thank you so much. Okay, just maybe to reflect a little bit when it comes to your assessments. I fully agree that the amount of money in the Russian budget, it reflects the trend itself. Yes, there is the corruption factor, which is strong, and corruption helps them losing money on the way to their goals. But we don't have that many analytical means as foreign experts. We cannot maybe analyze all those trends that we have in Russia. And if we study the Russian budget, if we analyze this may be one of the approaches that will not give us direct conclusions, but it definitely will shape some trends and indicate trends. And based on those reflections, we can use the massive data that we're accumulating to make conclusions. All right. I'm passing the floor to my colleague Mykyta Kuzmenko. Some general figures, like what can we expect soon? The analysis of Russian key expenditures on disinformation, like what are the trends? What is it telling about? Thank you so much, Volodymyr. Yes, just to confirm the statement of Mr. Ihor that they will always find money for propaganda. Despite the fact that even the expenditures for defense and national security in Russian budget for 2026, they have smaller amount than for 2025. If we total all the expenditures, like with different names, so basically like pushing the image of Russia, 146.3 billion rubles. 7% more than in 2025, so they plan to have more for propaganda. 28% more than in 2021. Average monthly expenditures on state media in 2026 in Russia will reach approximately 12 billion rubles. That's a huge amount, based on the estimates of experts. And Russian propaganda machine is one of the most expensive in the world. The largest expenditure blocks federal TV channels activities and traditional media, TV, radio, press. Within Russia today, VHTRK, TASS, and the rest of these agencies. Kremlin is trying to cover the internet space. They're adapting their strategy, and in 2026 budget, they have 731 million rubles to push pro-Kremlin content in the internet. And an interesting case, some specific TV shows and formats are funded separately from the budget, like we had it last year with Volodymyr Solovyov's Solovyev Live show, this media project, got even separate money from state budget, 14.1 million rubles. Ridovka, 49 million rubles additionally they got from the budget. So, the strategic background of that propaganda budget increase, it's clear. So, if you want to continue the war, you need to control the informational space environment. We understand this. Inside the Russian Federation, of course, beyond Russia. Propaganda activities in the states where Russia has launched its hybrid war against. Propaganda money, they will always find it, and they use it to push their narratives in various forms and various platforms. Thank you so much. Just to draw the line, okay, I would love to say that Russian disinformation is evolving, unfortunately. So they use new methods and tactics. The electoral campaigns prove that in Romania and Moldova. And we observe some new trends that Ukraine has to track. We don't know today when, even tentatively, we're about to have our elections. But anyway, we have to keep fit, let's say, and track the trends that we have in this area. Keep the fingers on the pulse and know how Russia is impacting the electoral processes in European countries. When it comes to Ukrainian experience and comparing to Moldova, I'd like to note that actors are evolving. Those who push the pro-Kremlin narrative, they also evolve and change. With the processes we have in Ukraine, I mean mobilization, and we have so the lawyers are becoming more popular, those lawyers who create some content around the mobilization issues. They already add some political senses to that, and in future we may observe that such informational platforms will be either used by other political actors or parties, or the opposite. These lawyers, they will turn into influencers, let's say. They can already be considered as influencers, and they have certain impact. So in future, they may be transformed into political projects. This is a risk, and we have to be very careful, and we have to check all the time how will Russia try to use this factor for their goals. Another problem is the impact of so-called social bloggers that Russia is hiring to popularize some narratives in Ukrainian info space, and many of them are pushing their impact from abroad, and this is harder for us. But with the case of Moldova, we can see that there are some tools to counteract that. It's not just about prohibitions only, but you have to be active on social media as well. For example, activities of Moldovan political parties and politicians in TikTok. We can even claim that this was quite a successful campaign. For traditional campaigning methods and engaging young bloggers, actively propagating the narratives and messages which were complying with pro-European narratives, and deactivated the mass of Russian disinformation that was poured in Telegram and primarily TikTok in Moldova. So we are bringing the discussion to the end. If maybe some questions we have from the audience? We do? One question only. So good afternoon.
I am former military diplomat of the mission of Ukraine to NATO and its shape. Colonel, General Staff retired, veteran of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. First of all, I would like to thank our colleagues from Moldova for their experience, and it will be their lessons learned for Ukraine, and especially if it will be very useful for Ukraine in the future, I will turn into Ukrainian and I will tell you some thesis. So,
So the first one, okay, just to have the full picture. You mentioned Dodon, who was afraid that Moldova will be a part of the war, will be dragged in the war between Russia and Ukraine. So I just want to say that now we have the global war of the new hybrid type, yeah? So it's not between two countries. And the previous Pope said that, who died already. And UNSG also mentioned that, so geopolitics defines the war. So we have the global war of the hybrid type. It's about census. It's a war of census. Census for us is everything to win the war for us Ukrainian. We have to forget the word that they call themselves, as they are the descendants of the Moscow kingdom. In their passports, they use Russian Federation, but they are not the descendants of Kiev Rus. We can call them RF, as many experts did, Erefia in Ukrainian. Because, you know, in English, they're not Russia, but Russian Federation. In Chinese, they have their own. Yeah, I'm just giving you the Chinese equivalent for that. There are no pro-Russian channels, Russian propaganda. We have either RF channels or Kremlin narratives, and so on. Thank you for attention. Maybe this will help in future work. Thank you for the comment. So I think we are finalizing the discussion. Yes, time flies. So yeah, the topic is really a voluminous one. So we can compare a lot of things when it comes to Moldova and Ukraine. Yes, we all have our unique experiences, but the trends are very clear. Yeah. So Ukraine has to keep fingers on the pulse and track all the trends of Russian disinformation with how they try to impact the electoral behavior. And we should always be ready and prepared for Russian attempts in the post-war time for them to try to shape our political behavior in Ukraine. Because we understand that Russian Federation, or whatever we call it, they will never lose their appetite, and they will continue their attempts to control our country. And Kremlin will invest so many resources in that. Despite this, we still have to resist. That's how we can eliminate the threat. Moldovan experience will definitely be very valuable for us in the context. So thank you so much, dear participants.
Us and follow our activities.
Thank you.
And have a nice and safe evening. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. With pleasure. Thank you.